They called it the abyss. It wasn't a cave or some mythical pit. It was an old, abandoned water treatment plant on the edge of town. Surrounded by thick woods, it had been left to rot for decades. Local kids dared each other to go there, but most didn't make it past the gate. The place reeked of decay and something else, something no one could quite name. When Alex heard about it, he didn't think twice. He wasn't afraid of the dark or old stories. He was a photographer, always chasing forgotten places, peeling paint and cracked concrete. The abyss sounded perfect for his portfolio. His friend Matt, less adventurous but eager to help, reluctantly agreed to tag along. They drove out one Sunday evening. The road turned to gravel, then to dirt, then nothing at all. They parked and walked the rest of the way, the crunch of leaves beneath their boots, the only sound. The sun was setting by the time they reached the plant. The building was massive, a sprawling maze of rusted pipes and crumbling walls. Alex pulled out his camera, the click of the shutter echoing in the empty space. Matt stood close, glancing around nervously. "This place feels off," he muttered. Alex ignored him, focusing on the light filtering through the shattered windows. As they ventured deeper, the air grew colder. The silence wasn't complete. It was broken by faint, almost imperceptible sounds. Drips of water, the creak of metal, and something else. A low hum. At first, they thought it was their imagination, but it grew louder the further they went. In one of the larger rooms, they found a rusted staircase spiraling downward. Alex's eyes lit up. Basement shots. These always sell. Matt hesitated. "We don't need to go down there. We've got enough." But Alex was already descending, his camera slung over his shoulder. Matt cursed under his breath and followed. The basement was a different world. The walls were slick with moisture, the air heavy with an earthy stench. The hum was louder now, vibrating through their bones. Alex snapped photos, his flash lighting up the darkness in bursts. Then they heard it. A voice, faint, almost a whisper. "Help me." Matt froze. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Alex nodded, his grip tightening on his camera. "Probably just the wind," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. They moved cautiously, following the sound. The basement seemed to stretch endlessly, a labyrinth of corridors and small rooms. The voice grew clearer. It was definitely human, pleading. "Please, I'm trapped." Oh, Matt stopped walking. "This isn't right, Alex. We need to leave." But Alex was already ahead, drawn toward the voice like a moth to a flame. They entered a large chamber, empty except for a single chair in the center. Chains hung from the ceiling and the walls were covered in deep scratches. Alex raised his camera, but before he could take a shot, the hum stopped. "Oh, The silence was deafening, and then the chair moved. Matt stumbled back, his flashlight shaking. "Let's go. Now." It was a man, or what was left of one. His face was pale, his eyes sunken, his mouth twisted into a silent scream. And then he was gone. And did you see that?" Alex whispered. Matt didn't answer. He was staring at the chair, where fresh chains were now swinging gently, as if someone invisible had just stood up. For a moment, Matt stood up. The voice returned, louder this time, coming from all around them. "You shouldn't have come," but the way out was behind them in the little hallway. The hum started again, deeper, more intense. The walls seemed to vibrate, the chains rattling violently. Alex and Matt ran, their footsteps echoing in the corridors. But the way out wasn't where they left it. Every turn led them back to the same room, the same chair. The voice followed them, mocking, laughing, then pleading. Stay with me." Alex's camera clicked again, unbidden. He looked down to find his hands trembling. The last photo he'd taken was of Matt. But in the image, Matt wasn't alone. The pale figure stood behind him, its hands resting on his shoulders. Alex? Matt's voice was weak, distant. Alex turned to see him standing in the doorway, his eyes wide, his face pale. I can't move. The figure was there, right behind him, its hands now wrapping around Matt's throat. Alex screamed, dropping his camera as Matt was pulled backward into the shadows. His cries faded, leaving Alex alone. The hum grew deafening. The walls seemed to close in, the darkness pressing against him. He stumbled blindly, his breath ragged, his mind racing. The voice was in his head now, whispering his name. When he finally found the stairs, he didn't look back. He ran until he was outside, the cool night air filling his lungs. The plant loomed behind him, silent and still. Alex didn't remember the drive home. He didn't tell anyone what happened, but he couldn't stop looking at the photos. Every image from that night showed the same thing. The pale figure, closer and closer, until the last photo. It wasn't of Matt, it was of Alex, staring into the camera, the figure's hands resting on his shoulders.